What is the structure of cerebellum and why it's unnecessary for consciousness? That's the question we want to address in this short video. So cerebellum is, in summary, a series of a parallel computing structure. And it is likely to be highly developed to specialize in some kind of computation with a precise timing control. And that's very important for motor behaviors and also language expression and so on. And on the other hand, it's less ideal to integrate the information. And by what it means to integrate, and the information becomes clearer in week 10. But for now, you can consider that, let's say in the case of the precise motor control, you can control one movement without interference with another movement. That's a rough idea. And in the end, what I want to conclude is that this feature, that series of parallel computation that doesn't integrate or interfere with each other, is likely to explain why its lack of contribution to consciousness. Okay, so let's go a bit more. The entire, first of all, anatomical structure of the cerebellum. The entire cerebellum is unlikely to be critical for any aspect of consciousness, as we looked at in the previous video, right? When the patient is born without cerebellum, they don't have any issues with the consciousnness. And then when you're already adult, and then even if you are unfortunately got some kind of lesion or cancer or something like that, and then lose cerebellum, you will have a huge deficit in the motor control. That's for sure. However, consciousness-wise, all the senses seems to be more or less intact. Okay, that's what's reported in the literature. And this is not really trivial. The reason is that, as we will see, many theories actually presents that a particular type of the computation, a particular type of the state, such as synchrony or recurrency and so on, is relevant for consciousness. And indeed, cerebellum has lots of synchrony and computation and the recurrency there. So that's a bit difficult to explain why cerebellum is nothing to do with it. And yet, any theory of consciousness has to explain why this is the case. And but to say more, let's look at what's happening in the cerebellum and what's its structure like, and why is it unnecessary for consciousness. Let's think about it a bit more. So this is the schematic figure of the cerebellum. The left side of the picture is very similar to the picture, the expanded version of the picture on the brain when you're looking from the side. And so normally we have a picture of the brain, and the cortex sitting on top of this. And here's a sort of neck muscle, and this side is the front, okay? And this is a brain stem. So behind the brain stem, there is a huge structure of this cerebellum. And you'll see that there's lots of wrinkle here. And the wrinkle is the way to pack together many neurons into small areas. And sometimes you see this empty place, and then these are the place for the axons, the communicating pathway here, to go back and forth between the cortex, basically. All right. And you don't need to remember any of this anatomical structure for now. And I'm not going, yeah. All right. And then this is the architecture of one wrinkle of the cerebellum. So here it's important to point out two things. One is that there is this prominent and a gigantic neuron here. You see this, which has a huge dendrites and also axons, huge dendrite. This one as well. And this is a neuron called Purkinje cell. And Purkinje cell is one of the biggest neurons in the human brain. The bigger one is living in the motor cortex called beta cells, but that's nothing to do here. So this cell has a huge dendrite, and that means that many neurons input into this neuron. And then the second important thing is that this Purkinje cell is, interestingly, it's huge from this side of the view, but it's very thin from the other angle. So this is a thing that I mentioned in the beginning. It's a parallel computational architecture. Each of this Purkinje cell is almost like a fan, and it looks really huge along this angle, but it's thin here, and then it rotates like this. That's anatomical structure. And in terms of neural circuit, it's kind of complex. So the neuron, the input is coming from through this mossy fiber tract. And then that goes into this granular cell. And then the granular cell has this, long fibers. I think it's called parallel fibers. And then that synapses on to this large dendrites of the Purkinje cell here. Okay, so the Purkinje cells has receiving all these new gigantic number of the neurons, from granular cells, and then it's modulated in a complex manner by this type of the neurons, small cells or basket cells. And then eventually this Purkinje cell produces some kind of output into DCN, deep cerebellar nucleus or something like that. And then mossy fiber also projects it into here. And on the other hand, the Purkinje cell inhibits this neuron. And then another kind of recurrent or sort of control type circuit is here, inferior olive, and that's inhibiting or exciting these neurons, and then that goes into eventually premotor areas. Okay, so there is a recurrent and so complicated kind of circuits there. That's the point, and then that is replicated in many ways in a parallel way. So that's a basic architecture of the cerebellal circuits. And here's the picture of the cerebellum, Purkinje cells. As you can see, it looks really like complicated. It's not like simple. The right side circuit is way too simplified kind of architecture. That's what I mean. I wanted to show. Okay. Having said that, as the left side says, each of the circuits are doing something really complicated, but it's not communicating very well. This is almost kind of can be modeled like the right side. And what it tries to capture is this cerebellum computation is more or less feed forward, meaning that input into each of these subcortical sub network receives, and then that goes into this kind of feed forward manner of the computation. Okay, and each of them is connected relatively loosely, like here. And then if you have some kind of theory that tries to capture this cooperation or integration or interference, whatever, then it turns out that each of these unit of the computation can have some kind of complexity, but it doesn't have a huge complexity when you consider this unit as a whole. And that's what it means. And wait until week 10 when I explain what it means for this signal symbol. It's called phi, and this number is called integrated information. But I think this is one way to understand why cerebellum doesn't contribute to consciousness, and we don't lose consciousness when we lose cerebellum. All right. So in summary, this short video explained that 60 billion neurons in cerebellum is not necessary for consciousness, and we need a theoretical and principled explanation for this fact. And it's a key to key to understand this, the parallel structure of the cerebellum, and that's I think is the case. And integrated information theory of consciousness we'll cover in later weeks, may be able to explain further why this is the case.